We hear a lot about the Wagner Group in the context of fighting in Ukraine and also in parts of Africa, but it appears there is much more to this organization than a collection of mercenaries. In fact, Wagner, which is headed up by Yevgeny Prigozhin, is thought to be a whole empire consisting of heavily armed thugs, lawyers, computer scientists, and political scientists, numbering in the tens of thousands. Well, a group of investigators at the London-based Dossier Center has managed to get their hands on thousands of documents which shed fascinating light on this shady, hitherto little-known organization. Well, for more, we can cross to London now and speak to Katya, who is a senior researcher at the Dossier Center for Investigative Journalism. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Katya. And just to be clear, we're not giving your family name at your request. Wagner is a complex structure. It seems to consist of a myriad of, I don't know, 400, perhaps even more different companies. It basically seems to be a state within the state of Russia. Now, looking at all of the documents, what struck you the most in terms of what we found out?
Hello, and thanks for having me. Of course, as the Dossier Center, we've been researching and investigating the Prigozhin empire, we would call it, for the last at least 5 years, since at least the murder in the Central African Republic when 3 Russian journalists got killed. So from this leak, one of the most surprising things we found was the names of mercenaries who first tortured and then killed the Syrian national in Syria back to 2017. We also got enormous amount of names like trolls lists, like of course the Wagner Group lists, the internal security service inside Prigozhin Empire, which is mostly responsible for controlling those leaks away from public, but actually these guys are helping us a lot, to uncover more and more inside Prigozhin Empire. We also got to know about 400 companies that are affiliated or controlled directly and indirectly by Prigozhin. Of course, more information on the transnational activities done by Prigozhin employees inside Africa and the Middle East, and like a bit of spicy thing, the personal engagements of Mr. Prigozhin with the Kremlin representatives.
And what does all of this tell us? And what do the documents indicate about what the Wagner Group is trying to achieve? What are their goals?
They're not trying to achieve their personal goals. Of course, they're playing according to the sort of Kremlin playbook, right? And basically, like Prigozhin Empire or Wagner Group itself, Wagner Group is the only kind of military hand of the Prigozhin Empire. They don't work independently from other structures controlled by Prigozhin, which means that depending on the host country will, they would provide certain packages, for host country. Like, for instance, in Africa, we've already seen sometimes the Wagner personnel would be actually fighting on the foreign soil. On the other hand, you have instances where the Wagner Group would be just instructing the local armies. Also, they are responsible for protecting the natural resources like mines or oil refineries. And then you have another part, which is more consisting of sociologists, political advisory, media, or troll factories. And this kind of complex structure helps to achieve the main goal for the host country, which could be control over the political regime or socio-economical changes. But in exchange, the Kremlin would receive an absolute loyalty and, of course, from time to time, the natural resources. I mean, the same, of course, for Prigozhin. So that's what's sort of important to understand. I mean, with the Ukrainian thing, it's a very different story. And, of course, Prigozhin had to be there not only because he is a well-known person, for the Kremlin and for the Russians, but also because his group was fighting back in 2014, and since then they were operating really well. So it means they are quite trained in there.
And Katya, you say that the Wagner Group is working hand in glove with the Kremlin. In the media, we've had a lot of reports about disputes between Wagner and certain individuals back in Moscow, notably in the defense ministry. Having read what you've read, does that make sense? Or do you think perhaps this is just a red herring and perhaps a smokescreen, a media tactic, if you like, used by Wagner and Moscow to confuse?
Oh, of course, we don't think that Moscow is trying to confuse the audience or the media outlets. No, not at all. I mean, they definitely have their internal conflicts, and especially between the Russian MOD minister, Sergei Shoigu, and Yevgeny Prigozhin himself. I mean, I think it just went public since the Ukrainian aggression started. Before, Wagner Group would be going as a parallel structure to the Russian MOD. And of course, the Russian MOD would be supplying the military aid to the Prigozhin guys. I mean, up to now, Prigozhin is still asking, the Russian MOD to supply more and more weapons, to sort of win the war against Ukraine. But previously, they're still going in parallel structures, as well as with GRU or other military structures inside Russia. There are only like two basically governmental bodies Prigozhin would be servicing for. It would be the presidential administration and, of course, Putin himself.
Let's talk about some of those companies you mentioned, the whole network of different companies, shell organizations and so on. I mean, it does sound like sort of Wagner is a kind of an international mafia holding company. Do you think these different companies have actually managed to help Russia to get around the sanctions that are in place targeting Russia? Has that been part of the strategy, do you think?
Well, 400 companies are only in Russia. And then there are another, God knows how many companies around the world. Of course, we are looking into this case, and you're right, there is a high probability that these companies in particular are helping to avoid or go around sanctions a bit, especially like the African case. We're still looking into Sudan, Central African Republic, and Cameroon as three potential countries for those guys to move the gold or move the bloody diamonds, for instance. So yes, it is possible, but the major problem is that it's almost impossible to trace these companies, because if previously, like back to 2018, 2019, these companies were registered under the Russian national names, which was not a big deal, to get to the register and get this insert and look at them. But now they became much smarter. So like most of these companies are registered now at the local nationals, which is, again, have no sort of at least visual affiliation with Prigozhin structures or Prigozhin employees, which makes it extremely, extremely difficult to track and trace them. And when those sort of major leaks are helping us to understand what's going on inside.
Okay, so that's the companies. I want to ask you now about the troll factories. About 400 people expected or estimated to be working for these troll factories. Tell us about what they're trying to do and where they're active.
I would start a bit earlier, because like troll factory is a well-known thing. I mean, it was very active during the US elections, and they're of course active in Europe as well. But back to a couple of years earlier, we would have a list of those trolls employees, and we would see the number would be increasing 1,000 employees. And now we see only 400. And in our belief that this is a connection with the local troll factories organized in Africa, and they're sort of transnational because they use French language, which is greatly applied to other countries. So basically, if we look at those documents, we would see that the troll factory is a little bit exaggerated by the media outlets throughout these years. We would see that mostly they're trying to steal the content from, other channels. Would it be YouTube? Would it be like Telegram channels, etc., etc.? They would be outsourcing enormous amount of people. So basically, they don't do anything unique. No unique job is done, right? They would be paying for retweets. They would be paying for like different quite popular Russian bloggers to promote, their agenda or to promote their channels as well. Also, they would be, of course, writing comments like pro-Putin, and since the war started, of course, pro-Prigozhin or pro-Wagner group, just to increase, visibility there. So
we're nearly out of time. I just want to ask really quickly, in 10 seconds, where do these documents come from, and how can you be sure they're authentic?
Yeah, these documents came to the German outlet Die Welt, and they shared it with us and to other organizations that are really well doing with the Prigozhin stuff. We know it's authentic because we have our own data sets, and it's exactly matching our information from previous years.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I'd love to talk to you for longer, but we're out of time. Katya, a senior researcher at the Dossier Center for Investigative Journalism, thank you for taking the time to speak to us.